Good morning. Thanks, Brandon, for that joke. I never really made that connection, but that was a good one there. So as I was walking out the door yesterday to come here, my wife says to me, remember, you're not funny. No jokes. Stick to the facts. Okay, so sometimes I think I'm a little funny. So if one slips out here or there, don't find her on Facebook and tell her, because it'll be painful when I get home. So Dan Craytor, I'm from Microsoft, Chief Technology Officer for the Department of Defense. Just a little background, I am a retired Army aviator. I've probably heard all those jokes, but if I haven't and you got a new one, lay it on me, because I'm just going to use it on my Air Force buddies. But spent most of the last 15 years in IT working different projects, but most of the time for Microsoft. So what I want to do today is talk to you a little bit about the cloud, a little bit about the future, and some different ideas you may have about the cloud. Most of this talk is about my research as a PhD candidate. So I've been doing that over the last couple of years. There'll be some stuff in here from Microsoft, but my research is mostly on the big three, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. Not that there aren't other good cloud companies out there, it's just this is where I limited my research to so I could get done in this lifetime. The big three are really much larger than everybody else out there, so that's why there's a lot of good data out there and stuff to talk about. So the first thing I want to do is just talk about and define the cloud, baseline everybody. I'm not making an assumption you know anything about the cloud or what it may be, so we're just going to do a quick baseline here so everybody has level set on that. We're going to use the NIST definition for cloud. And really, we start at the top, the cloud computing characteristics. A lot of people think, oh, I got a virtual machine, I'll stick a couple virtual machines on a server and that's a cloud. Not by the NIST definition. If you want to call it a cloud, that's great. I don't care what you call it, but that's really not the NIST definition of cloud. We feel pretty comfortable talking about broad network access and on-demand self-service, but really where the cloud starts to provide us benefits is around the rapid elasticity and measured service, and then starting to take all those resources and pool them together to provide rapid scale up and scale down. And think about the different scenarios you may be able to use those in, and there's a tremendous amount of value provided from the cloud. You have some different service models that are really kind of generic type of definitions. Depending upon the cloud service provider, they'll offer these in different services, they'll call them different things, so you got to kind of weed through it a little bit. But infrastructure as a service is like taking your machines that you have today, virtualizing them and putting them and hosting them in a cloud service provider. You have the most control, but it requires the most amount of work for you as well. You're required to do the patching, the networking, the updating, keeping the OS and the applications patched and updated and operating. Then you move up to platform as a service. Think of these as like web services or websites, where you're going to take some of the cloud service providers' cloud fabric, take advantage of that for redundancy, resiliency, elasticity, and you're going to create these applications on there. You're still responsible for the application, but the cloud service provider is going to provide that fabric and quick scale up and scale down. And finally, there's SaaS, software as a service. This is a full-up service you go sign up for. Think about Office 365 or Google Docs, maybe Salesforce.com. This is a service provided. You go swipe a credit card and say, I want to start using that service. The cloud deployment models, public, private, hybrid, community. You can have a public cloud hosted by a cloud service provider. You can also have a private cloud. It doesn't have to be on premises. It can be wherever you want it. It's just that it's designated just for you or your organization. So let's talk a little bit about trust in the cloud. This is where what I found very interesting, how irrational humans can be. Financial trust. So CNN did a study, and they found out that about 10 million households don't have bank accounts. I did a little more study. Washington, D.C. area, I live outside of Washington, D.C. The Chamber of Commerce says that's about 92% of the population has a bank account, the other 8% doesn't. That may be because they don't trust the bank, they don't have any money, they see no value in banks. There's a host of different reasons why we may not use financial institutions. But for the rest of us, you could probably make the assumption that we do trust the banks, right? And what's great about the banks? It's kind of like a cloud, because I can go just about anywhere in the world, stick a piece of plastic in, get money out, and then my phone rings, right? Because that's my wife going, "What are you doing?" I'm not kidding there, that wasn't a joke. So we could assume that we pretty much trust the banking system, the most of us, right? So stick with me on that. Then life trust. I can prove to you that you trust the airlines more to fly you across the country than you do to have your best friend drive you to the store. And let me give you this. So let's say you and I are best friends, okay? You say, "Dan, let's go to the store." Okay, I'm driving. So what are you going to do? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to look at me and you're going to say, "Is Dan capable of driving? Does Dan know how to drive? Is Dan impaired in any way? What is his car like? Does he have a flat tire? Is a fender falling off?" If any of those things are negative or too high of a risk for you, you're going, "I ain't going." How many people here got on an airplane to come here today? Did any of you do that with your air crews? Make an assessment of the aircraft, air crews, were they impaired? Nope. Nobody did, because you're all here, right? So why is that? Why do we blindly trust the airlines when we don't trust our best friend? It's because of their security transparency. The airlines have tried over the years many times to be very transparent. All right, they have big catastrophes sometimes, but a lot of times, it is much less than the auto industry, yet we still get in cars and go every day. So we trust the airlines, right? Precious resource trust. How many people here have kids in daycare today? Highly unregulated industry, depends upon state to state, but we drop our kids off every morning in a daycare and expect to receive them back in the same condition as we left them when we dropped them off. We don't know the people there for the most part. It's not regulated, and we're okay with that, right? I always wondered when I dropped my kids off at daycare, if I dropped them off in the morning and I got them back in the afternoon and they had a cold or some virus, do I get my money back for that day? Because it's not in the same condition? No, you don't. But I don't feel comfortable storing my data with a major cloud service provider who has spent billions on facilities, securities, processes, training, regulation, compliance, third-party audits to validate what they have done and said is true, and all backed by financial guarantees. Why is that? So let me just give you a quick view of compliance just at Microsoft, just simply because they had the best looking slide up there. So there's a lot of different compliance standards here. ISO, SOC 1 and 2, those are audits, highly expensive, a long term to certify their data centers and their operations. ISO 27018, security guys, who knows what that is? There's got some hands up there. That's the security for cloud services. There's some other ones down there that are DoD specific. DISA level 2, FedRAMP, ITAR, International Traffic and Arms Regulations. And down in the bottom, you might see this one here, China. I'm not even sure what that is, but I'm thinking if China says it's okay, it's probably okay, right? So I don't feel comfortable with the cloud because I hear of all these major security breaches, data exfiltrations, like Target, Home Depot. You guys familiar with those? You've heard them on the news. You've seen them. And there's more of these. A vendor for Target, their air conditioning HVAC vendor, had a breach connected to Target. Target was breached, lost all your identities, right? You can look that up in the Senate kill chain analysis, that report. That's a good one to read if you're interested in a kill chain analysis. Home Depot, eBay, lost our identities. Anybody know what your identity is worth on the black market today? Care to guess? Hear anything? No? 50 cents. because it's a commodity now. So many identities are out there now. Your identity is cheap. It's a commodity. But then you get into like OPM. Anybody here have their identity lost in OPM? Everybody raise your hands. Yeah, everybody's there. You're all there probably twice. If you've ever had a security clearance or at least a background check, that stuff is probably gone. And then Veterans Administration, medical records, some of those are gone. So when you start to add some of these things up here, then the value goes up. You start to do these correlations. Okay, I got his medical records, I got his fingerprints. What about Ashley Madison? Anybody got, no, don't worry about that. Nobody raise your hand. We don't want to know. That's something we keep separate. But that now creates a blackmail case. So this gives us this trust. I'm concerned about the cloud because all these things potentially could happen. Oh yeah, and then there's these guys. So did they not change how we think of cybersecurity? We're all safe, right? We're good to go. Never going to happen to us. And then these guys come up. This number represents the number of reported security breaches by Verizon in the last 2 years. Anybody work for Verizon? No Verizon? This is a really good report. These guys do a great job. It's freely available information. If you haven't seen it, go out and look at it. I just picked up the last 2 years because that was a big number there, but they do a good report every year. There's a lot of validation that can be done by the Cloud Security Alliance. Information is Beautiful is a good website to look at the largest data hacks. It does it in a very nice visual way. These all kind of validate each other. But 143,227. That's why people are scared of the cloud. Oh, by the way, how many cloud service providers are in this number? Anybody care to guess? 0. Not one. I've sent out emails. I said, hey, are you guys sure you guys got this number right? Yeah, we've checked it. We haven't seen it. So the next thing that happens is people say, yeah, but Dan, you know, Microsoft or Google or Amazon, if that came up, they don't want anybody to know, right? Well, they probably don't, except it's in their contract with their business customers say, if we have a security breach, we're going to notify you in X amount of time. And you know, if that comes up, somebody's going to tweet. It's going to come up, just like it did with the iCloud. One celebrity gets breached, somebody tweets about it, and everybody knows. So there's none of these out there, which makes you think, wonder why that is. So let's talk about some myths. Enterprises are secure because owners have more control. Fact is, this is from a study prior to WikiLeaks, and I would argue that this number, 97%, is probably like 99% now. Because we know insider threat, even on classified networks, is not safe, right? So just about everything is vulnerable. CSPs are not exempt. They have similar vulnerabilities. What you need to do is determine, is what you're looking for as a CSP, is that a general IT vulnerability or is that cloud specific? Because if it's general IT vulnerability, then you're not looking at evaluating just the risk of the cloud. My employees provide the best security for my data. I would argue that is an incorrect assumption, simply because compared to a cloud service provider who is able to spend a tremendous amount of resourcing, training, and equipping their people to be more secure, have more training, and oh, by the way, not allowing them to touch any keyboards. Because here's the deal. Microsoft Chicago data center is 14 acres in size, 700, 800,000 servers, I don't know what it is. Oh, by the way, it's about 4 years old and it's obsolete. We'll never build another one like that again. But for those servers, the staff there is about 34 people, 24/7, 365. And that includes janitorial, security, grounds and maintenance, and IT staff. And the reason that is because everything is automated, because the first time you let a human touch a keyboard to fix something or change something, there's a chance of an error. So to be competitive and be efficient, automation needs to be able to do everything. Cloud computing has more vulnerabilities than enterprises. Again, back to the general and specific IT discussion. Maybe, but not likely. If others are using the same hardware, goes to multi-tenancy. I'm going to sign up for a service that other people are using. There's more chance that I'm going to lose my data. Not necessarily. That used to be the thought years ago, and it was absolutely true. That scenario, technology has improved to where we now have the capability to isolate traffic, isolate storage. How many people have ever been in a tactical talk where you got your zipper rack over here, you got your nipper rack over here, and you got your cable hanging down here with an open port over here, and somebody goes, oh, that must go in there, click. Seen it happen. Finally, security or if there's a security or incident or data breach in the cloud, all customers are affected. What we talked about above, same thing. Technology is potentially there. Okay, so Tony Scott is the US CIO. I've worked with Tony a few times, and Tony is a really smart guy. And Tony's been around the block. In fact, Tony was the CIO for Disney, General Motors, Microsoft, VMware, and now the US. Tony's had some experience, and he knows what risk is about for enterprises and organizations. And his recommendation is to get to the cloud as quick as possible. And as we do that, we think about why those reasons are. And it's because a lot of the things we talked about. But you have to decide for your organization, is the risk worth it? What is my core business function? Is it IT or is it something else? And then decide what to move. So here's some organizations that are currently moving in large scale to the cloud today. U.S. Air Force will move to Office, along with DLA, Defense Logistics Agency, will move their entire email to the Microsoft O365 cloud starting, I think we pushed back 1 month, but probably in May. Navy Reserves is a pilot for the Navy, same thing. UK Ministry of Defense. While those first 3 DoD organizations are going to what we call a dedicated and ITAR type of private cloud, UK Ministry of Defense says, we'll take public. It's way better than what we can do today. We're good with public, let's get it moving. And they're already moving. The US DoD is using the UK MOD for a pilot. Let's see how it looks. Terry Halverson, Tony Scott, both CIOs, they're working together to determine how do we work with our allies, the Five Eyes nations, to better secure environments there. Okay, so the next thing I have, I got a little treat for you here. Hopefully it's a treat. We're going to look into the future just a little bit, and how do we defend things like IoT, Internet of Things. The things that are coming up, the technologies that are changing, we're looking today, I've just spent the last, 15, 20 minutes or so convincing you to move to 6 or 7-year-old technology from your 20-year-old technology that was conceived 30 years ago. But what's happening now is technology is redoubling every 2 years. You've all heard of Moore's Law, right? Every 18 months, CPUs double increase in speed. Technology's doing that about every 2 years now, redoubling, and it's growing on a much faster rate than what I would ever have thought. So, one of the things that Microsoft has developed is a wearable Internet of Things. If you're familiar with virtual reality, you think of the goggles, right? Virtual reality is you have to basically sit down. You can't walk around because you can't see through them. Augmented reality augments what you are seeing and what you're experiencing through visual, audio, feel, perception, smell coming before along as well. So what I want to give you is just a quick video on what we call Hololens in a DoD aspect. And what I want you to keep in mind as you watch this video is you're only limited by your imagination. And I can tell you what you're about to see is just a very small part. If we could roll a HoloLens video, please. So anybody spend any time around a sand table? It's kind of V2, right? Pretty amazing stuff as you think about that. But think about all the data that it took to create and provide that information and the security required to go and secure that data. So that's today. As we think about the future, think about these three scenarios. There's currently a project an organization is doing, taking microsatellites, shoebox size, deploying them in a constellation. The goal is to have a constellation that can video 100% of the time the entire globe down to a 1 meter square. What that means is we will never lose a Malaysian airliner in the Indian Ocean again without knowing what's happening. Another organization is working on Project Tricorder. What this is a smartphone-sized device that can diagnose your ailments faster and more accurate than 10 doctors. Think about impoverished areas where there's 1 doctor per 1 million people. Having a device like that, being able to diagnose someone's health, send that information back, have a drone deployed with the meds and drop those off all automatically, has a tremendous effect on the outcome. And finally, there is a project from a company, and what they're doing is they're using an MRI to image your visual cortex. What does that mean? That means they're going to be able to record your dreams and play them back to you when you wake up within about the next 5 years. That ain't never happening to me, because they will put me away. But I'm really interested to know what my dog's been chasing all these years. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time. Hopefully this has given you some things to think about. There's a tremendous amount of work to be done, and thank you very much. Okay. Thanks again.
One second. I'm coming up. I think that's because people were just so flabbergasted by that all. They have no clue what their questions even are. I mean, it's so easy to listen to what the media tells us and what's trending on Twitter right now. And if it's not #CyberTalks, I really need you all to do your part. #CyberTalks. When everyone says, trust in the cloud, scariness, but that's what part of this day is all about. It's about challenging our preconceived notions on what's out there in the space. And so this was amazing. I really appreciate this, and this is a great body of work you're doing for your PhD. But of course, a coveted cyber ACI, cyber black badge we have for you today.
Made it all worth it.
Woohoo!
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.